I'm grateful that God's good and he's kind and he designed sex and we get to enjoy it. That's super cool.
Right.
It could just simply be for procreation. And thankfully, it's not just for that.
That's right.
Welcome to the Purpose Podcast. My name is Rachel, and I'm so grateful that you've taken time today to invest in yourself, to grow in your purpose. And we are so excited about the series that we're in this month and what we're talking through. So before we get into that, we just want to remind you to like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, and make sure that you share it. If something is encouraging to you or challenges you, we really just want you to share that with someone around you and take it to the next level and talk about how it impacts your own life or how you guys can grow in that together. Go through those action questions and steps that we have at the end for you. We really believe that it's going to help you take your next steps.
All right. I want everybody to take a moment and think of the thing that makes you feel the most awkward. Go ahead. Like for me, there's people who are pointing at each other, which is awesome. But what I think about, you think back like when you did something like really embarrassing. I wouldn't say like I get like real embarrassed, but like I remember one time when I was younger, I asked this lady when she was going to give birth. And she wasn't pregnant. And even right now when I think about it, it makes my stomach hurt so bad, right? But
I love that happened to
you. Either way. So I want you to think about what makes you feel the most awkward, and just realize that we're going to push past that boundary today, okay? Because today we are going to talk about physical intimacy, and we're going to talk about that no matter where you're at in life, whether you are single and you want to live a life of purity, whether you are married, whatever it might be. But as we talk about relationships in this month, I mean, intimacy is a part of that. Physical intimacy especially. And it's not something that we should be ashamed of, that we should be scared of, that we should feel super awkward about. And I really want to encourage you parents, if you haven't already clicked off and stopped listening, this is huge. I remember in student ministry, when Rachel and I were running student ministry, and we would talk about sex and intimacy, and parents would get mad because they say that their kids, they're not ready for that. Oh, they're being talked to about it.
Oh, for sure. Now it's the saying is, if you wait till 8, it's too late.
Right. The average age a kid sees pornography now is 8 years old. Now, again, I know that there's a lot that goes into that. Mm-hmm. There's a ton, and you may think, well, there's no way. But the stuff, I mean, our daughter, we're going to get going, but our daughter, who's in 3rd grade, I'm almost positive.
That's correct.
3rd grade. Last week, she was talking about 2 girls kissing in class. And so 3rd grade, we live in the South. This is not like we live in like some crazy area or anything like that. But either way, physical intimacy in whatever stage you're at in life, it applies to you. Whether you are in a discipleship relationship, whether it's where you're at, how you're personally wrestling with physical intimacy. And I would say we probably all have something somewhere to grow in this area, something we need to do, something we need help, whatever it looks like. But that is what we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and do it this way. Let's start with a little bit of testimony, a little bit of story time. Revelation 12:11 says we will overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, which is Jesus' sacrifice, and the word of our testimony, which is what God has done in our lives. So Rach and I walked 2 very different paths when it came to physical intimacy when we were growing up.
Sex, yes.
Yes. I was trying to leave the sex word to a little later so that we got them hooked first, but it's too late now. You let it out of the bag. But babe, would you talk us about your process with that?
I'm super grateful that I was raised in a home with 2 parents who followed Jesus, and they taught me about God's original design for sex, that he created sex, that it was designed to be used within a marriage and between a man and a woman. And that it was not, I'm super, honestly, more grateful than anything. My mom spoke very frankly with me So it was still a little uncomfortable because everybody's uncomfortable about talking about sex.
Right.
But when I waited until I was married. I didn't date anybody except Zach. I went on a couple of dates, but really no committed relationship. God called me at 14, spoke to me, asked me to wait until I met my husband, which made me super
Popular.
really popular. Guys were just knocking on my door. Couldn't wait to date me. So I didn't have sex with anybody but Zach. So, and I'm really grateful because there was no jading for me because the perspective I had been taught by was that sex was a good thing, that God made it, He gave it to us. So when I walked into marriage, I really am so grateful. A lot of girls who had waited have really wrestled with not feeling shameful, even having sex with their husband. So I just like it was a beautiful story for me, my testimony was I chose Jesus and it was really hard to wait, and I got sent home a lot while we were dating.
I was gonna tell him that.
Oh, well,
Well,
let
me tell you.
Find a nice way to say that.
Let me tell you about my because my story is different. I obviously have amazing, godly parents who, they were clear with me about sex. Dad would ask me all the time about, hey, how you doing with lust, pornography, stuff like that. But if I could just be frank with you, whenever I was 9 or 10, I stayed over. I'm gonna be vague because my family's pretty public, but I was staying at a family member's house, an extended family member's house. And I remember I was sleeping on the couch, and I laid down. Like my arm was hanging off the couch. And again, like I said, probably 9. And there was a piece of paper under the couch, and I pulled it out, and it was printed out porn from the internet. And I got down. I'd never seen it before. This is my first time seeing it. And I got down and looked under the couch, and there's hundreds of pages. And I'm 9. Like, I don't know let's push it past sex. Like, I don't know what masturbate. I don't know what any of that stuff is, right? I know awkward. I know. I don't know what any of that means, but I stayed up all night and just looked at it. And I didn't know exactly what this meant, but I knew it did something to me inside. We're actually have a podcast in a couple of weeks with Jessica about not awakening love before it's time. But there was a part of love that was awakened in me at 9 that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't ready. That's weird. I've never really gotten emotional thinking about it. But it opened up a part of love that I just couldn't handle it. And so I got really addicted to pornography in the next couple of years, and lost my virginity when I was 13, and it was just a real struggle for me. And I again, like it was so specific. Like I've never tried alcohol, I've never tried any drugs, but for some reason, physical intimacy was just a real stronghold for me. And I think part of it was that moment where it's like, hey, this thing like bursted open inside of me. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't know how to comprehend that, and we'll talk about it later. But I kept that to myself. Like I didn't tell my dad. I didn't say, "Hey, I saw this. It makes me feel this way. What do I do with that?" I just, because even at 9, not fully understanding what this is, there's still this shame to it. Mm-hmm. So it's just a weird deal. I don't know why that's impacted me. We're fasting, so I guess that's what it is. So for me, it was a different thing. But I do want to tell you, God's a redeemer. And going back, Rachel, we dated for a year. We didn't kiss. That was the decision that she had made with God, and I wanted to honor that. And but after we got engaged, we were allowed to kiss, and Rachel thought she would make up for lost time. And there were many nights, and just this crazy deal where there were many nights where I was like, "Hey, you really need to leave. You need to go." And I would walk right to her car, and she would go home. But that's a year of doing things like that, of telling Rachel, "Hey, we're we're so close. We're right here. And I just tell you that this wasn't necessarily a part of the plan, but um, if you're in a spot, uh, you just feel like you're in bondage, you know? You're just overwhelmed. And I don't know why I just feel this burden. Um, this is a hard one. So maybe it's pornography, or maybe you feel abandoned by your spouse, or whatever it might be. Um, God is a restorer. There's no question. And so this is a gift from God that the enemy likes to take, like he does with so many other things, whether it's relationships or marriage or your purpose or whatever it is. He likes to take it and distort it and twist it. But God's a restorer. So whether you've been abused, or whether you believed a lie, or whatever it is, our God is a creating God. That means he's a recreating God. So that means that he can, wherever you're at, he can bring purity. Wherever you're at, he can bring restoration. And so we came at intimacy from different places.
Mm-hmm.
We came at it, and so we'll share stats, different things like that with you. But we just want to make clear, no matter where you came from, that God's got a great plan for you in the future if you'll surrender and submit this part of your life to Him, because the world offers a fake intimacy, but God's word and God's plan and God's purpose for your life offers not a fake, but it offers a freedom that the world can't match. And so, just to give you some stats that impacted me, when you think about physical intimacy, one of the major things, especially for men, but men and women, that comes up is porn. And 60% of men who view porn feel lonely or isolated. 74% of men who view porn feel insecure. 74% of men who view porn are less satisfied with their sex lives. And so it's just a major one that I think a lot of people think about. But the stats bear out that it's a fake. The stats bear out that it's not real freedom. You talk about a sexual revolution, which Rachel she studied it. She's a little more educated than me on that. But I can tell you from a man's perspective that I've bought these fakes, and man, that's exactly what they are. And just like a fake purse or fake sunglasses, they fall apart and they fray and they fade, and it's not the freedom that God designed for. So, Rachel, when it comes to a woman's perspective across the board, because there's some foundational things that we struggle with, what would you say are some of the fakes that women buy when it comes to intimacy?
Well, I think one of the things is women are now, this is not just pornography, it's not just an addiction for men, but women are just as engaged, becoming more so in pornography, believing that it will educate us in how to have sex, believing that it is an accurate representation of what sex should look like. And so there's this idea that if I can perform sexually, and this tends to be like the root, if I perform sexually for this person, then I will get the emotional validation and connection that I so desperately want. And sex is really supposed to be, when it's within a marriage, a culmination of unity. It is something that happens as a result of intimacy, and thankfully, like when we know God, that's a spiritual intimacy, there's an emotional intimacy, and then this physical intimacy kind of rounds some of that out. That's why you have makeup sex. If you really think about it, there's been disunity in your relationship, and when there's unity brought back, there's emotional, relational unity, then sex is a result of that. And so for women, we tend to, we'll hook up and say, okay, well, maybe this will be the guy, and this will satisfy me for a moment. Women have just as many sexual urges as men do. Women like sex too, and they're looking for satisfaction as well. But it's interesting. Studies show that women is consistently, it's found following one night stands and hookups, that women are more likely than men to experience regret, low self-esteem, and mental distress. So when we're in an effort to be satisfied, to feel wanted, to feel validated, we are left with the opposite of that, not loving ourselves, not valuing ourselves, and feeling badly.
Yeah, and something that we're going to continue to talk about during this, because this, when you think about intimacy, one of the big things in our culture right now is same-sex attraction and transgender and things like that. And you may have somebody in your life who's a believer who is in those places, and what's the response? Because you may feel comfortable, because those things might make you uncomfortable. But whenever you may feel comfortable telling somebody who is the opposite sex attract, however you would say it, but you may look at that and say, well, you have to walk in purity, which is true. You got to walk in purity, and if that's something you really desire, you got to wait for God to give it to you. But I always want to be really conscious and clear, and I'll tell some stories in the podcast later this month, that this is something that, because there's a lot of same-sex attracted people who are Christians, and part of what they're walking through is not different than any struggle that
a straight person, that's right.
Yeah, that you might have. But I would tell you, as I've had people in my group that walk that way, there is what I would consider a despair in their life whenever they have to decide, am I going to honor God and never satiate these desires, or am I going to walk in, biblically the fake of purity outside of the bounds that God has set? Because the bounds are not set by Zac and Rachel. The biblical definition of marriage is between one man and one woman. It's not a government deal. It's a God deal, like we talked about last week. But that purity, that life of purity, which again, purity and righteousness are huge. But in Matthew 5, it says, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled. And when it comes to, I was saying intimacy a lot, Rachel, chimed in there with the sex word, but, because that's what it is. It's a desire to be filled. It's a desire to be wanted. It's a desire to perform for somebody else. It's all these things, but it's a desire to be there for somebody, for this space in our hearts to be complete. And I just want to tell you that God does have what you need. No matter what, whether you're a student fighting for purity, whether you are a married person trying to get on the same page with your husband or wife, whether you're a same-sex attracted person and you're processing, oh my gosh, do I not get to have this? Is this, is that not it? And so I just want to make sure and cover, and which again, it's one of those easy preaching, hard living, but when Jesus goes through the Beatitudes, when we hunger and thirst for righteousness, for that purity, for God's presence, we will be filled. And when he says we will be filled, that there's not a desire, there's not a place in our lives that he can't be what we need.
Well, and God's clear, and we just want you to know, you may not agree with everything that we talk about today. And so even if you don't agree with us, or hey, you're wrestling, we just hope you hear how deeply God loves you. No matter what your desires are, no matter what addiction you find yourself in, no matter what has been done to you or what you have experienced, God loves you so deeply and longs for a relationship with you. And experiencing something doesn't put you in sin. Desire alone does not put you in sin. And so whether this is something that Zac and I are honestly, like, I'm so grateful that God said, hey, like Zach and I've talked really openly, like just within our marriage and publicly as we've walked through this together and learned to love each other and with intimacy, that his desire to look at pornography doesn't put him in sin. So your desire sexually for somebody isn't where the sin is. It's the step after it. And so God says sex is designed to be between one man and one woman within the covenant of marriage. And everything outside of that is sin. So, when you're looking at pornography, whether you're a married man or a single man, a married woman or a single woman, you are in sin. And if we can just for a second notate, hey, when Zach talks about addiction to pornography, that is not a term we choose to use lightly. That more than likely, if you find yourself in that place, not only do other people need to walk with you so that you can experience deliverance, you might need some counseling, probably need some counseling to partner with you, especially if you're married, what that can do in your marriage, the brokenness that can just in your relationship, having somebody who knows, who can walk with you and love you so that you can walk in healing. It's so important. So we are really I'm grateful that God's good and he's kind and he designed sex and we get to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. That's super cool.
Right.
It could just simply be for procreation. And thankfully, it's not just for that.
That's right. So, hey, we won't keep you. I know some of you guys never got over that awkward stage at the beginning.
Oh, that's hilarious.
20 minutes ago. But let me give you an action step. Let me give you an equipping step because, again, what we desire most is to equip you to walk in your purpose so that you can win your world. That's your calling. Your purpose is to grow the kingdom of heaven. So we want to help you. And your soul health, which your intimacy is a massive part of that. Let me give you this action step. Let me give you this verse. This is in Matthew and in Luke, but I'll read Luke 11:34. The eye is the lamp of your body. When your eye is clear, the whole body is also full of light. But when the eye is bad, your body is full of darkness. So let me ask you, are you letting darkness in? Are you making compromises? One of the things we say here about winning your world is we win with character, not compromise. Are you compromising on what you're watching? Are you compromising on what you're listening to? Are you compromising on the people that you hang out with or what you know that person wants or doesn't want? Are you compromising by not meeting your husband's or wife's needs? Because I think it's God honoring to consider the needs of your spouse and meet them, especially if you're wanting them to meet your needs, right? But let me ask you something for you to reflect on and something for you to act on. Are there things that you're letting into the lamp of your body that are filling you with darkness, that are pushing to you to a place where you are wanting the world to fill your intimacy instead of Matthew 5, those that hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled? I know this is an easy topic, but we love you and we're grateful. And I pray that this helps you. Students and young adults, we are praying for you. This is not an easy time to walk in purity, not an easy time to walk in character, but you can do it. Our God's a restorer. Our God loves you. He wants to be near you, and he wants to use you to win your world. We're so grateful for you. We'll see you next week.